Hello there and welcome to a new tutorial for Divisimate. In this video I want to take a look at 5 tips and tricks for working with Divisimate and Cubase 10. Cubase has been my main DAW for over 10 years now, and there are a couple of specific ideas and techniques I wanted to share that could make your life with Divisimate a whole lot easier or inspire new ways to incorporate it into your workflow. There are a million different ways you can work with virtual instruments and Divisimate, and everyone will have their own preferences here. So in this video I want to show you some ideas and useful methods for building a workflow around Divisimate. We'll start out with some pretty simple stuff, but it gets more detailed and complicated down the road. Let's get started. So the first one is a pretty small thing, but it will save you a lot of time if you didn't know about it. While working with Divisimate, you may find yourself navigating the input menu quite a bit, choosing and assigning different Divisimate ports to different tracks. That's a bit tiresome in itself, but on Windows it can be the case that the ports are not even in order, since Cubase weirdly does not sort them by name here. This way, looking for a specific port can become frustrating quickly. But there is a nice solution for this in Cubase. This upper part of the menu is actually a search bar. If you type here, you will be able to find the port you are looking for among only a handful of options. There's no need to type the full name of the port, just type in the number and the port you're looking for will be among the few options. Precede a single-digit port with a 0, so you only get the ports you are actually looking for. It seems like a lot of people were not aware of this feature and have been constantly hunting for the right ports in the drop-down menu. So here it is, I hope it makes your life easier. Especially if you are integrating Divisimate into an existing project, you may have a bunch of tracks in your project already receiving MIDI from a source called All MIDI Inputs. Usually that's just the easiest way to record MIDI on your track. If you bring Divisimate to the project, however, this All MIDI option can get confusing or produce a bunch of note duplicates unless you turn Divisimate off. This is because all notes from the 32 Divisimate ports get added up here and recorded onto this track. But in Cubase, All MIDI Inputs actually doesn't necessarily mean all. You can go into the studio setup to the MIDI port setup. Here you can decide which MIDI devices should be included in this All MIDI Inputs option and which ones should be left out. To have all tracks behave the same, you can take all your MIDI devices off that list and only leave the box checked for Divisimate port 1. This way you can set Divisimate to bypass to record any single track and not deal with duplicates for tracks that have all MIDI inputs selected. And this way you don't need to change the MIDI input for every single track in your pre-existing template. Speaking of pre-existing templates, we're getting a bit more advanced now. A lot of people have probably already spent a lot of time setting up their own orchestral template and refining their workflow long before Divisimate came out. So bringing in Divisimate and connecting every single track can be a lot of work and can also slow you down at first. But you could go for a hybrid approach where you hook up a part of the tracks to Divisimate to play them as ensembles and work with the rest of the tracks the way you're used to. Here's a template that contains a bunch of different instruments, much more than the 32 tracks Divisimate can address in one go. As you see, for example, in the woodwinds, there are multiple different variations of the same instruments from different developers on separate tracks here. So what I did here was choose just one of these options for each instrument and connected them to the Divisimate ports. I used the port mapping from the Swarm orchestral template, so I could use the presets from that one immediately. And I connected one of each instrument to a Divisimate port and left the rest of the instruments set to all MIDI inputs. Now to use the connected tracks with Divisimate and play them as an ensemble, I need to record enable only these tracks all together. And to get a proper workflow going, I need to do that quickly. So for this, I can use a link group to link these channels and record enable them together. I go through the template and select all the tracks I want to use with Divisimate by holding the Alt and Control keys. Then I bring up the mixer page and you see that my track selections carried through to the mixer. Now I right-click on one of the selected channel strips and choose Link Selected Tracks. In this menu I can enter a name for the group, I'll just call it Divisimate, and choose which values should be linked. Here I will leave out everything but the Record Enable Monitor checkbox. I don't want the faders to move together or any automation or routing, I just want them to be record enabled together. Now when I record enable any of the tracks included in this group, this will be carried over to all of my tracks connected to Divisimate. The cool thing is that this does not apply to the automatic setting to record enable a selected track. So you can still quickly record the tracks alone by selecting a track or by alt-clicking on the button. But if you click on the button without the alt key, the whole group is record enabled no matter where the tracks are in the project. So this is pretty neat, and actually it's how I'm working in my personal template right now. You can set Divisimate to bypass and work the way you have always worked, or quickly record enable the right tracks to orchestrate ensembles with Divisimate. And you don't have to change the way your tracks are organized. You may already be familiar with the loopback method, which allows you to use a track in your sequencer as input for Divisimate. Also, by sending MIDI CC31 or program changes, you can call up different presets on the perform page. So knowing these two things, we can set up an expression map on our loopback track to change presets using key switches in Cubase. Here's how it works. I have a Swarm string quartet set up here, receiving from Divisimate ports 1 to 4, and a MIDI track receiving my keyboard and breath controller over all MIDI inputs and sending to the Divisimate loopback port. On this track, I can go into the expression map setup to create an expression map to switch presets in Divisimate. First, we need to add a new expression map. Let's call this one Divisimate Quartet. Then we can add something to the sound slots over here. For now, I want to switch between 4 different presets with my quartet, so I'll add 4 slots. And I will assign remote key switches to these slots so I can trigger them with keys on my controller. So let me pull up Divisimate on the side to see which presets I want to trigger. For every slot, I will put in the name of the preset I want to load. On all of these slots, I then adjust the output mapping to send a value that will load a specific preset in Divisimate. I add a slot here and set it to send a value on controller number 31. To load a specific preset, this value needs to be the number of the corresponding perform pad displayed in the lower right corner. So I put in the number for this preset and repeat this process for my other key switch slots. Alright, my expression map is finished. Now all I need is to assign it to my loopback track. Done! Now I can switch presets by playing key switches on my loopback track. Now it's getting even more technical. Divisimate 1.1 introduced the option to choose the channel and port number for each row of the matrix. These can be saved and recalled with every preset, and there's a way to exploit that feature to control larger templates and connect up to 512 individual tracks with Divisimate in Cubase. Let's say I have a full orchestral template here, loosely based on the Swarm orchestral template. Essentially, in this ensemble layout, all 32 ports are already used for an instrument. This layout includes a woodwind section, a brass section, and a 5-part string section, but only a harp and a piano and no percussions or other instruments because there are no ports left. But now I would like to include different mallet instruments to use them in my orchestrations. I already have a couple of instruments loaded, a xylophone, a celesta, a marimba, and a glockenspiel. And I'm setting them to receive MIDI from the same port as the piano, which is port 26. Now I want each of these to receive only a specific MIDI channel, and for that I use a little tool in Cubase called Input Transformer, which can filter and transform MIDI messages based on different rules. I access it through the little arrow button in the inspector and choose Local, since I want to set up different rules for different tracks. I wanted to filter out everything but one MIDI channel, so I set it to filter and add a new rule. Block incoming messages on every channel that is not channel 1. Now activate this module and only messages from channel 1 are allowed to come through to this track. And then I repeat this process with channel 2, 3, 4 and 5 for the next couple of tracks. Now I have these tracks set up to receive only one specific channel of one specific port, and I can select the channel I want to send to in Divisimate. So while all 5 are record enabled and connected to port 26, when I change the channel in the port properties, I can select the specific instrument I want to sound. So this way I can have Divisimate specifically address different melody instruments of my template in different presets, even though all ports were already used for other instruments. So those are 5 tips for integrating Divisimate into your Cubase workflow. If you found them helpful, make sure to subscribe to this channel to get more of this stuff. Feel free to share your own tips and tricks in the comments, and of course let us know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching and see you on the next video.